Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to FoundFlix. On this Inning Explain, we'll be looking at the recent Netflix hit, The Platform, following a new resident of a vertical prison with 1 cell per level and 2 inmates per cell, where the only means of eating is via a platform of food that comes out once a day, which leads to madness and murder in order to survive. The Platform is a very compelling horror movie with an obviously tight budget, unfolding mostly in simple concrete cells and with few characters, but impressively manages to craft a very detailed and unique world with its limited means, showing us that you don't always need a lot of money to craft a great film. Extremely well acted, full of tense, exciting encounters, and some absolutely brutal gore and violence as well. It actually has a lot more on its mind than it might appear on the surface, acting as a kind of social self-criticism of our modern times. And this is the real meaning behind the story, which does have quite an abrupt ending, making things appear to be inconclusive, but actually does conclude the grander story at play. And so we'll be looking at what the filmmaker was actually going for in detail and the film's true message and meaning, as well as explaining the ending and how it ties everything together. With no context of anything going on in the outside world, we are initially dropped into the very tippy-top level of our facility, delightfully referred to as the pit, which is quite full of pomp and luxury, all warm colors and violins setting the scene with some nice classical tunes. We follow a guy that seems in charge of all the food preparation going on, going through different areas and doing everything to put out absolutely perfect dishes. Also seeing just how much food they have up here, from rooms full of meat and an almost whimsical machine pushing oranges through a conveyor belt. It all ends with an assembly line of chefs putting the final touches on their dishes. And it does look pretty damn good, to be fair, but this is of course the top. And naturally things aren't that great as the levels descend further down. As is stated in the beginning, there are 3 kinds of people in the world: those at the top, those at the bottom, and those who fall. Meaning there is no middle, only the 2 extremes and nothing in between, which we'll see a heck of a lot of in our story. As we meet one of the many people housed in the facility, our audience proxy Goreng, who comes to unaware of what's going on in a concrete room that resembles a prison cell, also including a rectangular hole in the middle that allows you to see the other levels above and below. He questions his roommate Trimagasi, who is initially standoffish, telling him to stay on his side of the hole, and is consistently cagey about what he reveals to Goreng, only piecemealing out information about the ins and outs of life in the facility. They are currently on level 48, which he says really isn't so bad, and Goreng wonders what they're going to eat. Well, the leftovers of the people on the levels above, obviously, he tells him, and peers down the side of the hole, seeing countless levels below. And Goreng attempts to communicate with someone down there, but Trimagasi tells him to stop, for no other reason than simply them being on a lower level than they are. And by the same token, the people above won't listen either, clearly illustrating the social structure at play here. He tells Goreng he's been here many months, and that each month they're taken to a different, seemingly random new floor. A red light on the wall changes to green, meaning that it's feeding time. A platform lowering through the hole and coming to a stop covered in scraps of food, and not exactly looking appetizing. Goreng is disgusted, considering how many people have already eaten off of the food, but Trimagasi is too busy hungrily chomping down on whatever he can, knowing that this is his only chance to eat, and after being in here for a while isn't as willing to be grossed out. Gotta eat or die. Suddenly their feast is taken away, what's left being taken down to the next floor down. Goreng tries to snatch an apple for later, and quickly learns that attempting to keep food is against the rules. The room's temperature begins to increase exponentially, Trimagasi saying it will continue until they freeze or burn to death, forcing him to toss the apple down below. We briefly flash back to Goreng's initial interview, and learn that everyone gets to take 1 item in with them. In his case, the book Don Quixote, which has deep symbolic meaning to Goreng's journey in the facility. And oddly, he actually chose to enter this place on his own accord, and was offered a diploma for completing a certain amount of time here. An entire year! I don't know how people could last a month here, let alone a year. His will hasn't quite been broken yet, still refusing to eat the scraps, which is actually irritating to Trimagasi, telling him he's unworthy of being on on this level. Yet at this point, Goreng doesn't quite get the whole picture of how bad things truly are around here. Just wait till you get to experience some of those lower levels, buddy. Unlike Goreng and assumedly most of the people here, Trimagasi committed a crime, and that's why he was taken here. And his story is actually kind of hilarious. One day while watching TV, a commercial for a product called the Samurai Max Blade Sharpener came on, and based on what the host was presenting, seemed like an excellent product. This led him to question his own life, feeling his life is crap for not taking care of the little things like sharpening his knives, feeling the Samurai Max would change everything. But a month later proved this wrong. The same host had a new product to hawk, a knife that sharpens itself, the Samurai Plus. Feeling betrayed, he threw his TV out the window, and it happened to land on someone outside, killing them. He was given a choice of going to a psych hospital or this facility, and somehow opted for this, which makes it seem like the outside world doesn't quite know what's really going on inside these walls. Because I don't know who in their right mind would pick this, and from the outside, it seems to be treated as almost like an opportunity to get in here, which is in stark contrast to the reality of being in here. And of course, what is his one item but the Samurai Plus knife, which could come in handy. He's been here long enough to know that there are at least 132 floors as he's been there himself, but also notice that there were still levels below this. Goreng considers how much food there is that far down, and understandably it's not enough to survive, if anything, at that point. He tries to think of the big picture, wanting to send a message down below to spread out the rations of food so that everyone gets their fair share. But Trimagasi knows that they won't listen to that kind of communism around here. He attempts to speak to the man below, and he just gets angry, not even attempting to listen to his pleas. And Trimagasi makes his own feelings known, taking a piss through the hole down onto him, all entirely because of their arbitrary higher level. Another food drop comes, and this time Goreng is being forced to get over his initial hesitation on eating leftovers. Soon after the platform leaves, a blur comes crashing down from above. Yep, a body. Trimagasi casually noting that yes, people kill themselves all the time here, and he tells Goreng that he looks like the kind to off himself as well, giving him the nickname of Little Snail. Too weak to deal with these kinds of living conditions. Jeez, thanks for the vote of confidence, friend. Although this is based on his own personal experiences here, and rattles off a long list of the many floors he's already been on, and that he just came back from the dreaded 132. After all that, to Goreng he looks too healthy and well fed, and accuses him of killing his cellmate and eating him. He doesn't even really try to deny it either, as a platform returns, this time carrying a stowaway, Miharu, who rides the platform all the way down once a month in search of her missing child. Goreng horrified to think that they would let a child in here. He attempts to reach out a hand and help, but according to Trimagasi, she's not used to someone being kind without there being nefarious intentions. And he knows that she is in fact a cold-blooded killer, and considers that that body that fell down earlier could have actually been her cellmate that she killed. The two had actually been former cellmates, and he mentions that it didn't take long for them to turn cannibal and start eating human flesh, which, you know, once you pass that barrier, all bets are kind of off when it comes to survival, which we see for ourselves when the platform goes down to the next level, and the guys aren't nearly as civilized as Goreng, immediately grabbing her and dragging her out of sight. He's mortified, Trimagasi encouraging him to jump down, yet there's no need. Miharu emerging victorious from her attackers and jumping back on the platform as it continues through the lower level. Do not mess with this lady. Their time there slowly passes, becoming engaged in a bizarre daily routine while trapped here, until the month passes and they are gassed. Everyone then switched to different levels. As they pass out, Trimagasi tells Goreng he's fond of him, despite still not being sure of his survival chances, seeming that they have become friends after spending all this time together. Yet when he awakes on level 147, it's obvious how much friendship really means around here. Finding himself completely bound to the bed and unable to move, all his former friends doing. He lays it out pretty plainly. Things are really bad down here, and he has no choice but to carve Goreng up and eat him to stay alive. But at least is going to be disciplined about it, only taking the pieces of flesh he needs bit by bit rather than just mercilessly killing him, and even offers to allow Goreng to have his share of the meat as well. Wow, yeah, thanks for the compassion, old friend. Appreciate you sharing my own flesh with me. Okay. We get a solid indicator of the hopelessness this far down the floors, hearing a chorus of screaming from up above as people awake and realize where they've been taken. And immediately more people jump down the hole to their deaths, and see why this is when the platform comes down and there's literally only stemware left. No food of any kind left behind. Ah, well, at least he has Goreng to feed beat on, and he attempts to reason with him, but Trimagasi places the blame on the floors above, their actions basically forcing him into this position. He does at least wait a while before beginning to take his flesh, deciding to read Don Quixote for himself and dancing on the platform like a lunatic. Inevitably, the time comes. Calling him his little snail, Trimagasi admits to getting weak, and if he gets any weaker, wouldn't be able to precisely cut Goreng's flesh off, and promises to stay away from his genitals. Wow, thanks again, buddy. He gets to slicing with his Samurai Plus, taking off a pretty big chunk of meat, and it's not looking like Goreng is gonna last too long with this going on. Luckily for him, Miharu is taking another one of her trips on the platform, and wanting to help Goreng after he tried to help her, she dispatches Trimagasi with the knife and cuts his restraints. Understandably pissed, Goreng brutally stabs his old friend repeatedly and kills him without mercy, which is at least slightly worse than the somewhat humane way Trimagasi was treating him. The difference is pretty negligible though, to be fair. Coming to later, Miharu is already feeding off of his body and offers him a piece. With his wound not looking so good, he has no choice but to choke down his flesh to stay alive. She kindly tends to his wounds before departing with the next platform down, and she's gone just like that. Now that we're really getting to see the context of the brutal reality of the lower floors, we're given another glimpse of the view from up top. The same older gentleman presiding over the preparations, and when given a panna cotta, it has a single hair on it, taking the chefs to task for their obvious mistake. This whole thing almost a satire of the view from the top, concerned with tiny insignificant details, while down below everyone else is eating off scraps and inevitably eating each other to stay alive. To further contrast this difference, Goreng is feasting on maggots from his friend's corpse for nourishment. It's like, yeah, things are pretty bleak in a much more real way down here than some pudding consistency. After tasting his first piece of human flesh, the ghost of Trimagasi appears, saying that since he consumed him, he is now a part of him. Goreng smells gas, realizing he's hallucinating this ghost of his friend, and that there's about to be another fateful floor change. At least things are looking up, waking up much higher than before on level 33, with a new female roommate Molly, whose one allowed item was her dog. I mean, are you kidding me, dude? That thing is gonna get eaten in like a week, and then I gotta feel all bad about it because it's cute. I mean, it's a wiener dog, for God's sake, as Goreng points out once he comes out of the fog of the gas. After getting his bearings, he recognizes her as the woman who interviewed him to get into the facility. And it does seem especially odd that she wound up here, although she does eventually admit that she didn't really know what things were like in here, and is presented with a much more hardcore reality than she was prepared for. I mean, she brought her dog, for God's sakes, this is a bad idea. Although she thinks his choice of a book is weird, as literally no one else has ever chosen to bring a book in, rattling off obvious choices like weapons and crossbows and shit. And he remembers back to his interview, getting a little clue to the reason behind their specific menu, her asking what his favorite food is, offering that it will be included on the menu. Escargot, he finally decides, is his ultimate choice when prodded, which of course his buddy Trimagasi always called him as Little Snail based on his demeanor. Being a part of the behind-the-scenes working of the facility, she has some more insight into its grander purpose, it being a social experiment of sorts, calling it a vertical management center. The idea being if everybody only ate what they needed, then everybody on all the lower floors would have food as well, spreading the wealth amongst the masses. But of course, in practice, we see that that is not the case. Even though the experiment is not working without intervention, she still attempts to maintain their cause, creating portions of food for the people below and trying to appeal to them on the lower level. But the man she's talking to just came back from level 88 and is just happy to be alive, unable to even consider anyone else's plight outside of his own. Goreng bemoans her useless attempts. If it was so easy to achieve this kind of societal solidarity, wouldn't they be doing it on the outside? But she still refuses to give up, every time doing her portions and trying to plead with her lower neighbors to see the reasoning of rationing for all to share a piece, to the point of annoying Goreng into threatening them. If they don't do what the lady asks, he'll take a big old dump on the food before it gets down to him. But this has limited potential because he can't sway the people above, as he can't shit upwards like he says, although that would be very impressive. Outside of a joke, it shows how limited the spread of their message will ever be, never being able to appeal to the much more pivotal upper floors due to their arbitrary lower level, which is a sly look at the deeper meaning of the film. Sure, this social solidarity is ideal in theory, but in practice is an entire other matter. They're given further problems when Miharu returns on her monthly trip and is not looking so good, courtesy of having to defend herself from above. They pull her off to the bed, and the room begins to turn cold. Another piece of food has been kept after the platform left, thanks to Molly's dog getting a piece of lunch meat. meat, Goreng retrieving it and tossing it below, which returns the room to normal, further proving what a foolhardy choice it was bringing a dog in here really is. As soon as she's feeling better, Miharu goes for Molly, feeling her responsible for her missing child, and killed her precious dog as well. Yeah, I was like, it's just a matter of time, Poochie Poo. And as usual, she takes the next platform down. But Molly has some surprising information about the woman's true identity, and that she's actually an actress, hoping to become the next Marilyn Monroe. Her one item, a ukulele, and that she came on her own accord, seemingly by being in the facility and surviving, would add notoriety to her celebrity status. And it also becomes clear that Molly isn't being 100% truthful, or just simply doesn't have all the information. And the reason that she chose to enter is due to a fatal case of cancer. With no possibility of getting better, she didn't care her fate. But once again, I feel like she would not have entered if she had any idea of what it was actually like, as she pretty much just said. With her added filling in on some blanks on our twisted experiment, we once again return to the top floor, focusing in on the chefs impressively honing in on the intricacies of Goreng's preferred escargot dish, and placing it amongst the extremely luxurious feast up on level 0. And as soon as it reaches level 1, they tear into it with great abandon and greed, gorging themselves and not even considering the many people on the levels below them that are starving and resorting to cannibalism. Amazingly and ironically, the escargot dish survives unscathed to their level to Goreng's disbelief. He offers some to Molly, but is inconsolable over losing her dog. He urges her to eat as their levels are about to change and she needs to eat while she has the chance, but she chooses not to listen. I guess it ultimately doesn't matter, because when he wakes up on level 202, she has hanged herself. And immediately old Trimagasi appears to push and prod him, questioning if he was planning on eating her too. And her ghost also joins Goreng's visions as a kind of Greek chorus regarding his actions and their moral implications. Seeing the ghosts of people that have died around him illustrates the deranged state of mind that he is in after his time here so far, and relates back to others like Miharu who have been entirely changed by their time here. Goreng abstains from eating on Molly's flesh as long as he can, tearing out pages from Don Quixote for substance, until the ghost of Trimagasi offers his Samurai Plus to slice her up, which he does with some hesitation, but again knows he has no other option to stay alive. When he wakes on a new level, it's by far the highest up the ladder he's been. All the way to level 6, baby! Things have got to be an improvement over before, right? His new roommate, Baharat, who is one item is rope, is excited too. Being so close to the top, he's hoping to literally climb his way through the last few floors. He attempts to speak to the couple on level 5, them asking if he believes in God. But they're belligerent, scoffing that he can't have the same religion as they, again feeling superior entirely based on their arbitrary higher position. They appear to have a change of heart, asking him to throw the rope up, but when he's right at the top asking for a hand, they instead take a shit right in his face, sending him tumbling down from his lofty ambitions, as well as his rope being lost down into the hole. This causes him to realize how screwed he is, since no one will obviously ever be willing to help him on the upper levels, and he breaks down, especially since they are so close to getting out. The food platform arrives, and as expected, it doesn't look quite as unappealing this far up the levels. But even one level down, they're already seen greedily tearing at everything they can get their hands on, showing it doesn't take long for people to descend into selfishness and depravity. Trimagasi appears, encouraging him that he's doing quite well, and can be well fed and recover on this level, tantalizing him that it's only 1 month left of his time here and achieving his diploma. It's already been almost a year! Wow, time really flies in the pit. But after everything he's been through, he decides to not take the easy way out, instead hatching a plan to ride the platform all the way down and force people to take their fair shares, and ask for Baharat's help, knowing it would be suicide alone. He thinks Goreng is a lunatic for even considering leaving their high level, and what happens if they run out of food before they reach the bottom? Well, then they'll ride the platform all the way back up to see where it goes, he says. And based on his calculations of the sounds heard and stops of the platform, he estimates there to be 250 floors, a full 50 more than what the company lady told him. He decides to join in, and they put their plan into action, which already starts off on a pretty difficult foot, as the first 50 floors get to eat every day, so they won't be handing out any food until reaching level 51, which right off the bat their lower neighbors have a problem with. Since they're not willing to play along, violence will certainly keep them in line, which they are forced to use with increasing brutality as they ride the platform deeper down. At one lower floor about to utilize violence again, a man whom Baharat knows, describing him as wise, chides them for their forceful way of getting their message across, telling them that it is a good idea, but importantly, manners come first. You must win them over with words before you beat them into submission. He has an idea of how to really get their message across. If they are able to keep one of those luxurious dishes completely intact and bring it all the way back up to level 0, that would make quite a statement, electing that the panna cotta will be the bearer of that message. So they try his way at first, but the other people aren't very interested, and so they have to bash them to stay in line. But at least they tried using words first, right? And they continue downwards, handing out the appropriate rations to the levels and using violence as necessary. And also, since they're portioning out the food, the plates people are given are, actual food on a plate instead of digging through remnants and scraps. Wow, what a concept, huh? Though things become much less rosy the further down they go, coming to levels where everyone is dead, and they realize the platform doesn't even stop if no one is alive on the level. Going down even further, they come across Miharu being attacked by two dudes, one brutally stabbing her to death, and the duo do their best to fight back, though Goreng gets absolutely pulverized by the big guy, and the other wielding a samurai sword gets a deep slice in on Baharat. But he is able to save his friend, decapitating the big guy, although they are definitely worse for wear after the encounter. And unfortunately, Miharu is definitely dead when he checks. Jeez, that sucks. And it's really looking like their big plan is effed at this point, but they continue on regardless. At one floor, bizarrely finding two dudes huddled in a blow-up pool, wrestling for meat when the guys toss it to them. Inflatable pool is the one item that you bring in. That's definitely an interesting choice. So what if I'm eating people? At least I got a little bath time. And even further down, a lone man sits with a big old bag of money, which is also pretty much useless around the facility. Him raining it down on them as they finally reach what appears to be the bottom, level 333, with only their precious panna cotta left. And there is no one there at first glimpse until they spot an opening, and surprisingly inside is a young girl, potentially the child of Miharu that she was looking for, since we have no reason to believe the company woman's story about her being an actress, as she was incorrect about many things, including the number of floors here. And further doubt is cast on the child's identity, because obviously Miharu never actually speaks, but Trimagasi specifically said her missing boy, not girl. The platform continues down, and worried about keeping the dessert, think they need to throw it along with the platform, but keep it anyway. And fortunately the room stays the same temperature. Seeing the innocent little girl, they decide that she should have the panna cotta after some deliberation, as it was supposed to be the message, but feel they couldn't be that cold to a child even after everything they've experienced. The platform goes whizzing back up, and he begins to read Don Quixote to her, clearly suffering from his injuries, blood dripping down onto the pages, leading to some more hallucinations of his dead roomies, having another involving realizing the girl is actually the message, not the panna cotta. Yet when waking up, he discovers his friend has bled out from his wound, leaving his final task up to him, even though he's probably batshit crazy and his entire plan came via dreams and hallucinations, but I wish him the best. The platform returns. The two hop on and go even further down to a vast dark expanse, a single shaft of light illuminating them as they reach the very bottom. Trigamasi manifests again, informing Goreng that his journey is over. He wants to go back up with the girl, but he rebuttals that she is the message, and the message requires no bearer. He walks off the platform, the two continuing their friendly bickering, him smiling that she will succeed, as the platform whizzes back towards the top. Yet our story ends before we see any kind of outcome, certainly making things feel a bit inconclusive and leaving many questions unanswered. First of all, there are a lot of specifics to the facility itself left vague, but the grander point of the movie comes across loud and clear. Essentially what we are seeing via the facility is a look at prosperity in our society. The food can be a stand-in for any number of things like money or success, or even indeed food, all proving the same point. Those at the very top greedily help themselves to more than their fair share, and thusly leaving less and less for those below, as each floor takes whatever they want, with no consideration for anyone below them status-wise in society. This is obviously represented by the 1% of society that has the lion's share of wealth in the world, again with no attempt to help or spread out the wealth to those in need, essentially dooming them to toiling fruitlessly below, reduced to killing others and cannibalism just even to survive, let alone actually be successful in any capacity. The experiment was intended to try and prove that people can learn to share and work together as a society, but we see in practice that it simply doesn't work. Even if someone who was previously very low on the floors gets a reprieve much higher up the ladder, they're again grateful to even be alive, and just as quickly forget that even they were in much more dire circumstances, instantly losing any care or for consideration for those down below. They turn their back on those less fortunate, even though they themselves went through the exact same struggles. It appears to be that human nature is typically selfish, which we see time and time again in the facility. It's always about one's own survival rather than everyone working together to help everyone survive. The young girl who is the message represents those who experience the fallout from those higher-up selfish nature, an innocent bystander that didn't choose to be involved like Goreng or committed a crime like Trimagasi. And in that way, this is what her purpose is as the message, to show the administration the greater impact their practices create, the completely forgotten people on the very bottom that are just as screwed by this whole thing as everyone else. The question is, when confronted by this idea on level 0, will they choose to admit their faults and elect to change their society, or just allow things to continue the broken way that they are expressed in the facility? Ultimately, we don't know, but as the director said when asked, saying we should ask society, that it's all up to us, depending on whether we want to remain the most miserable species that ever set foot on this planet, or if we want to change our ways. That's the big question the movie is positing, and exposing how broken our society really is through this ridiculous vertical prison thing. Now that his journey is complete, his overall character arc and how it relates to Don Quixote from his precious book comes into focus. Goreng is a stand-in for the noble knight. Quixote was known for always trying to help and failing in some way, yet never gave up on his lofty and madness-fueled goal of reviving chivalry and serving his nation. He refused to see the world for what it is, preferring to imagine he is living out a knightly story, which certainly by the end of his time, Goreng has also lost touch with reality entirely. Yet even more importantly, was known for its central ethic, that individuals can be right while society is wrong. Many consider it a tragedy, as his noble ideals are viewed as insane and are defeated and rendered useless by the state of reality. Sound familiar? It's almost a one-to-one of Goreng's time here, attempting to completely upend the broken society by forcing change single-handedly, even though the entirety of society around him thinks it's impossible. In the end, he was perhaps able to facilitate this change, or perhaps it was all in his head, just like Don Quixote. With that, we've reached the end of this in-depth explanation video on the platform. It does present its story and true meaning in an intriguing way, and yet just as in the film, there are no easy answers to the questions that it's asking, which is exactly why it leaves things on a very ambiguous note. And I appreciate that they didn't tell you it should be one way or another, it's just kind of exposing the whole thing. This was an excellent debut film from the writer-director whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce, and especially high quality for a Netflix film. Hopefully we get some more intriguing and thought-provoking content like this on the streaming service, which isn't exactly known for quality. But at least amongst the algorithm-fueled content, there is the occasional gem. And platform certainly fits the bill. And don't forget, before we go, you can send me requests for any movies or TV shows you'd like to see me explain by sending them my way on any of my social media accounts at FoundFlix. What did you guys think of the platform and its ending? Do you have any other lingering questions about anything I might have missed? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Thanks for watching FoundFlix. See you next time.